Good evening, everyone. This is Omar Nazem. I'm the Water Board's treasurer. This is a public hearing on the water and sewer rates charged by the board for water and sewer service in New York City. The Water Board heard a presentation on April 29th proposing an increase to the rates and charges. This meeting is an opportunity for the public to contribute comments and to hear the presentation and the explanation for why the change and what policy amendments we're looking at next year. I would ask members of the public to please place their phones on mute right now. Everyone will have a chance to comment later in the meeting. And I'm now going to hand the meeting over to Mikkel Adgate, who is the designated hearing officer for this evening. Mikkel?
Thank you, Omar, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this afternoon to hear the presentation, as well as to those of you who will be providing testimony, whether written or verbal. As Omar said, this is a public hearing of the New York City Water Board on water rates to take effect beginning July 1st, 2022. We are holding this meeting pursuant to state executive order permitting virtual public meetings as a public health precaution. Again, we would ask that everyone place their phone on mute in order to limit the background noise. I have placed several documents in the official record, including a notice appointing me as the hearing officer, verified copies of the public notices placed in newspapers, a draft of the rate schedule listing the rates and billing policies for the coming year, a public information booklet describing the proposed rates, and copies of the written testimony received by the board so far. The draft rate schedule and the public information booklet are also available on the board's website, as is a copy of the presentation you will be hearing today. This meeting is being recorded, and once prepared, an audio recording and transcript of the meeting will be made available on the board's website at nyc.gov/nycwaterboard. Again, that's nyc.gov/nycwaterboard. For members of the public who may have difficulty hearing, there is a real-time text captioning feature available to follow up with the meeting. You can link to the captioning service from the public hearing notice under the Meetings tab of the board's website. The program for this evening includes two sections. First, the Department of Environmental Protection will make a presentation explaining proposed water rates for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022, as well as billing policy modifications. Then, members of the public will have an opportunity to make a statement. I do have a list of pre-registered speakers, and when we get to that section of the hearing, I'm going to start by calling the pre-registered speakers by name. When you hear your name, please unmute your phone, and you will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After I have called all of the pre-registered speakers, I'm going to ask if anyone else would like to speak, and I will try to mediate between people speaking at the same time as fairly as I can. We do have members of the Water Board with us today, including Adam Freed and Jonathan Golden. Thank you for joining. We're also joined by DEP's Commissioner, Rohit Agarwal, DEP's Chief Financial Officer, Joseph Miuran, and the Water Board's Treasurer, Omar Nazem, as well as staff members from the Department of Environmental Protection. Before we get started, Chairman Carney, would you like to make any opening remarks?
Just a few, and thank you very much, Mikkel. First of all, thank you very much, Commissioner, for being with us, Commissioner Agarwal. In addition, we have Joe Miuran, the Chief Financial Officer of DEP, and he a dual role. He also serves as the Executive Director of the Water Board, and Omar Nazem, who serves as the Treasurer of the Water Board. Thank you all for being here with us. Are there other board members? We have Adam Freed and myself. Are there other members who are present?
This is Dan Zarilli. I'm on as well.
Dan, how are you? Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
And Mr. Chairman, you also have John Golden here.
John, thank you. Thank you very much. So we've got, looks like four members with us this evening, and thank you all for joining. Mikkel, only a couple of comments. The first is thank you very much for your work in making sure that as hearing officer we get it right. I really appreciate that. Second, I want to make sure that the members of the public know that while we have had the opportunity to view this presentation, there have been no discussions about it. We have not actually talked about it at all. We are looking forward to comments that we receive from the public. It's important for the record and for the public to know that we rely heavily on what the public thinks, what members of the public, what ratepayers think about where we are and what we're doing. You're going to hear a presentation which is very good, but it is not the be-all and end-all of the discussion. It is a starting point. We are looking forward to hearing what the public and members of the public have to say, and we are also looking forward to having a vibrant discussion at some point about the proposed rate and the proposed rate increase. Mikkel, thank you very much. I think that's all I have to say. Are there other comments from board members? Hearing none, Mikkel, you've got the meeting back.
Thank you, Chairman. Now we're going to hear a presentation from Commissioner Agarwal and Chief Financial Officer Miuran. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mikkel. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Water Board, and public. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Red Agarwal. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, and I'm pleased to be able to share the first part. Our CFO and the Water Board's treasurer will complete the presentation for me, but I'm pleased to present the first part of our update. And of course, the main reason we are here is that, as the chairman suggested, DEP has requested a rate increase of 4.9% for New York City customers. We'll share both the status of the agency and the rationale for that water rate as we go. I'm going to refer to the presentation that has been made public to the has been made available to the public and immediately move to page 3. Obviously, for basically every operation around the world, the pandemic of the last 2 years has shaped a lot of what we've done, a lot of what we've focused on. The good news, of course, is that DEP's water and sewer operations were not materially impacted by the pandemic in terms of actual operations. We had uninterrupted provision of water and sewer service, thanks to the heroic efforts of several thousand DEP employees who were continuing to work in the field and at their jobs on site every day during the pandemic. We do have some after effects of the pandemic, including a reduced headcount caused by difficulty in hiring. Our onboarded headcount right now is a good bit below our budgeted personnel levels. Like other city agencies, DEP's office staff returned to a traditional 5-day-a-week work week on site in September of 2021. One of the good news is, among the good news is that DEP has maintained many of the digital and productivity innovations that we introduced during the pandemic, and we think that our office operations are in fact somewhat more efficient as a result. And looking ahead, as I mentioned, since our headcount is below really what we need, recruitment, hiring, and training are among our agency priority areas for the next year or so. Turning to page 4, we've made significant progress on a number of projects that are worth noting. The most significant being the adoption during the middle of the pandemic, and hats off, I think our Deputy Commissioner for Customer Service, Jeff Lynch, is here, to him and his team and to our IT team for launching a new billing system, the UMAX and Microsoft Dynamics billing system that has replaced our former billing tool and is now providing, we believe, faster, more accurate, more detailed bills to all of DEP's customers. It was the largest system conversion that we've undertaken in the agency in the last 25 years, and it was a major effort. We're going to be looking forward over the next year or so to really exploring the additional functionality of that software for other things that we can do, including greater insight into usage patterns, potentially informing ways that we can work in the future to reduce water consumption and interact with our customers better. Our biggest physical project that's ongoing, of course, is the Delaware Aqueduct bypass tunnel that continues to proceed. We are in the tail end of that multi-year project, and we are in the process of coordinating a timetable for the final phase for when we are going to be ready to cut in that completed portion of the tunnel and put it into service. Right now, our focus is on preparing and doing a number of tests and doing a preparation to make sure that we only do that cut in when we are perfectly prepared to be highly confident that we will have uninterrupted high quality service to New Yorkers of their water supply as they've come to expect. We've completed work on $148 million of new sewer construction in Canarsie and East New York. We've done a roughly $16 million improvement to the Jerome Park Reservoir. We've started work on a $29 million package of upgrades at a set of NYCHA facilities focused on green infrastructure to mitigate stormwater flows. We've completed an $18 million partnership with the Department of Transportation for water infrastructure around Montefiore Square. We've started work on a $7 million drainage upgrade in the westerly section of Staten Island, including storm sewer and catch basin installations. And work continues on the major project at this point, more than 10-year, $2.5 billion commitment by the city that started in 2015 on sewer infrastructure and flood mitigation focused in Southeast Queens. And in 2021, we had some significant milestones of projects completed in Hollis and Queens Village. Those are among the highlights for what the agency has accomplished over the last year or so. And now I'd like to turn it over to Joe Miuran, our Chief Financial Officer, to present our financial situation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everyone. This is Joe Miuran, Chief Financial Officer for New York City Department of Environmental Protection. I'm on slide 6 of the presentation for those that are following along. DEP's capital construction program remains robust and well-funded. And as we'll get into further in it, the capital program is supported by the revenue raised to do the debt service on the capital for the assets that we are either improving or building new for the system. And what we have here is a comparison of the 10-year plan back in April of 2019 for fiscal year 19 through 28 versus the 10-year plan, current 10-year plan, which is for March 2022, fiscal years 22 through 31, showing that over that time period, the capital plan has been enhanced, going from $20.7 billion to $25.1 billion. With significant investments in all our operational areas, most significantly, of course, being water pollution control, but also continued enhancements, some of which the Commissioner just mentioned, the Southeast Queens in the sewer component, as well as water distribution, water supply and transmission, and equipment. So going through that slide now, I'm going to turn next to slide 7, which is about interest rates are rising, which will increase system borrowing costs. Market interest rates began to trend upward during the fourth quarter of calendar year 2021 and have continued to rise through May 2022. The increase in U.S. Treasury rates has been accompanied by an increase in municipal bond rates. Despite recent increases in interest rates, the system can borrow at rates comparable to long-term average borrowing rates. Together with higher rates of price inflation, higher borrowing costs are likely to increase the system's cost. Credit rating on water bonds remains high based on the board's authority and willingness to set rates that meet the system's funding requirements. I'm going to deviate slightly from yesterday's script because the chair did raise a question earlier today when we had the audit committee meeting about interest and the debt service. And I would like him to, if he would so choose, to reiterate those because Olga Chernet, the executive director of the Water Finance Authority, is on, and I think they will help, color some of the information here on this slide. So, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but you had raised a very good question, and I think Olga is ready to answer that for you as well.
Mr. Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director, thank you very much. I thought that there could be some benefit, certainly to the public, in hearing the Water Finance Authority experts give us some sense of our ability to market, to place our bonds over the course of the next year. I recognize that Olga Charnat, who is the person who I believe is on the phone, does not have her crystal ball with her, but even so, I think there's some benefit in talking about where the markets are and what we can expect with regard to yield over the course of the next 6 to 12 months.
Thank you, Chair. This is Olga Charnat, Executive Director of New York City Municipal Water Finance Authority. Good afternoon, everyone. I would be happy to address this question. So maybe let me start with an overview of our currently outstanding debt portfolio. So first and foremost, the authority issues debt to finance capital projects managed by DEP. And currently, the authority has approximately $32 billion of debt outstanding. The bulk of our portfolio, about 85%, is in fixed rate debt. This means that the rate on this debt was locked at the time of issuance, and it's not going to change unless this debt is really refinanced for savings in the future. Outstanding variable rate debt, that accounts for about 15% of our overall portfolio. And interest rate on this and interest cost on this portion of the portfolio will fluctuate with the market. So if interest rates in the market rise, rates on our variable rate debt will rise as well. If market rates decline, that same dynamic happens with the interest on our variable rate bonds. So as George just discussed, right now we are in a rising interest rate environment. And this is first and foremost driven by the Federal Reserve increasing its target for the Fed funds rate. Since the start of this calendar year, the Federal Reserve raised the Fed funds rate. Sorry for this interruption. By 3/4 of a percentage point. When the Federal Reserve increases its Fed funds rate, other rates in the market follow, including tax-exempt municipal market benchmark rates. In March, Fed policymakers indicated that they expect the rates to increase even further to as much as 2% by the end of this calendar year. And there is a potential for further increases in calendar year 2023. Just to note, the system's fiscal year, it includes a portion, the second half of the calendar year 2022 and the first half of the calendar 2023. So when we put together our debt service budget, we have to make a certain assumption on interest rates to make sure that we have sufficient revenue to cover our interest rate expenses. So for fiscal 2023, we assume 3.5% interest rate on variable rate bonds. And that would apply to already outstanding variable rate bonds as well as newly issued variable rate bonds. And this gives us, reasonably healthy cushion at a little over 2.5% relative to the current market. The assumed rate for fixed rate bonds is at 5%, and that also has a similarly sized cushion built into it. And this is to account for that expected continued rise in rates I mentioned earlier, and also to provide an adequate buffer in case of any market disruptions, which do happen from time to time. In terms of additional debt that we expect to issue in fiscal 2023, it's approximately $1.4 billion, and we expect it to be structured as a mix of fixed rate and variable rate debt. We also will be partnering again with New York State EFC to issue a significant portion of that $1.4 billion through the state's clean water and drinking water programs at the subsidized rates. So that's an overview of the financing program. I hope it's a helpful update, and we can now turn back to the presentation on slide 8.
Olga, it's very helpful. You expect then that the ratio of fixed to variable, barring some unforeseen and unforeseeable circumstance, will stay at 85%, 15% fixed variable.
I would say that's roughly the target range. It could change based on the market conditions, but that's sort of a reasonable mix, we would expect kind of going forward.
Olga, thank you very much. There are members on the call who may have questions for you now or later. Are there questions for Olga now as she has made her presentation? Hearing none, Olga, thank you very, very much. We're going back to Joseph Miuran, the Chief Financial Officer and the Executive Director, to complete his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Olga. So I am now going to slide 8. DEP and the board maintained billing and collection activities in fiscal year 2022 while facing challenges from customer delinquencies and lower water consumption. Billing and collections activity by DEP and the board faced the headwinds of customer payments deferrals and lower water consumption during fiscal year 2022. Through May 23, 2022, revenues were $3.35 billion, which was an increase of 4.3% compared to the same time in fiscal year 2021, above the 2.76% rate increase that was implemented for fiscal year 2022. Financial headwinds faced by DEP and the board include the balance of overdue customer bills, which is higher than before the pandemic. Second, water consumption levels below the quantity of water used prior to the pandemic. And third, limitations on the availability of collection tools, including reauthorization of the ability to sell liens secured by overdue water bills. During the pandemic, residential and commercial customers faced with loss of income deferred paying their water and sewer bills. As recovery progresses, we are seeing signs of customers who fell behind on their water and sewer bills starting to make payments to restore balances to good standing. In conjunction with what I've just stated on, we'll move to slide 9, which is water consumption by metered accounts remain below the pre-pandemic level, with recent consumption data showing an upward trend. And what we have here is a graph showing the change in water consumption since July of 2018 through March of 2022, with the broken down between residential, non-residential, and total consumption. And we'll see there that the non-residential, that's also commercial, or I should say is commercial, and other industrial uses, has taken a significant hit, has started to go up, whereas on the residential side, it was down, but then has started to recover. I will note that, as the graph shows with the blue line pulling the black line up, that the residential does account for about 80% of our consumption, with the other non-residential accounting for about 20% there. but we are tracking this very closely because it is a key indicator for us in terms of revenue collections. Next, moving on to proposed rate and billing policies for fiscal year 2023. Moving on to slide 11. DEP is recommending that the board increase rates by 4.9%, proposing a 4.9% rate increase for customers in New York City. Also, $30 million of proposed customer affordability program funds, preserving the 50% increase authorized in fiscal year 2022 into a second program year. There is no budgeted rental payment to the city for fiscal year 2023 at this time. We do have a bar graph showing the change in rate increases over the past since 2009 up through this proposed rate increase of 2023. The rate increase will, one, ensure revenue sufficient to fund the system's robust capital construction program. Two, support high ratings from the bond rating agencies. Three, help mitigate the system from the risk of rising interest rates and inflations. Four, support hiring and retention initiatives to return headcount to budgeted levels. And six, support expanded analytical capabilities, including analysis of customers' data enabled by the new billing system. Moving on to slide 12, residential customers with normal levels of water use will see a small increase in their monthly bills. What we have here is a chart showing the annual water and wastewater charges by examples of categories of homeowners or users. So for the average single family, who uses approximately 70,000 gallons per year, the current rate comes to approximately $994 per year. The proposed rate will have that go up to $1,041. That's an approximate increase of $4 per month. The average multi-family meter charge, that is 52,000 gallons per year, the current rate is $738 approximately, going up to $773, a monthly increase of approximately $3 a month. Multifamily conservation program per residential unit, that is currently at about $1,081 per year. That will go up to $1,134 a year, an increase of slightly more than $4, per month. And we're pleased to report that we will propose that the minimum charge for properties remain the same. That is, customers using less than 90 gallons per day will continue to pay $464 per year. And that is beneficial to mostly our seniors and other, disadvantaged homeowners or users. Moving on to slide 13. DEP is also recommending that the board continue its $30 million affordability budget, which would extend that 50% budget increase authorized last year. Here we have the chart showing what those four programs are. The Multifamily Water Assistance Program, which is for 4 units, which goes to approximately 48,000 users per year. That's $12 million. The Home Water Assistance Program, which is focused on smaller residential properties, that's a $140 bill credit that goes to approximately 96,000. Was the increase, almost doubling, more than doubling last year by going up to $14 million a year. We have the Leak Forgiveness Program, which allows customers to get a 50% bill credit if they self-report a leak that is fixed. That's $4 million in customer relief a year. That gives us total affordability programs of $30 million for the upcoming year. Moving on to slide 14, residential use charges will remain lower than in other large cities. And we have here the comparison that we do each year to 30 large city averages compared to New York. And we continue to run below that 30 city average. As of 2022, which was the latest numbers, our rate of $994 per year for a residential customer was, compared to the $1,262 for the 30 city average, it's 21% from there. So while we're raising rates 4.9%, they continue to still be affordable compared to other, large municipalities. Moving on to slide 15. What we have here is a summarization, financial outlook. We have here the financial outlook for the Water Board budget. This is a summarization of the forecasted cash flow statement that can also be found on the Water Board's website and what we call the Blue Book, which has this in a more detailed, a breakdown. And we have the major components summarized here that go into what are the revenue requirements that we need. So first, of course, or I should say at this time, is DEP operation and maintenance budget. And that is forecast to be $1.657 billion in fiscal year 22, which will end in just 1 month's time. And it's budgeted to increase to $1.824 billion for fiscal year 2023. And that's to fund the core utility services, personnel, and the related, other than personal service expenses to support the operations. I will go into some more details on the next slide as to what comprised that increase there. Next, we have debt service costs on water and sewer debt. That was expected to be $1.487 billion when fiscal year 22 closes out, and we're budgeting $1.643 billion for fiscal year 2023. As Olga just referenced when we were talking interest rates, we did benefit from, having budgeted a higher amount for interest rates in fiscal year 22, and those coming in somewhat lower. But we'll have to take a wait and see approach as we see how interest rates develop during fiscal year 2023. But as indicated during her presentation, we feel that we're taking prudent conservative measures in this very, challenging interest environment where we are seeing interest, rates going up. As noted, this is the debt service necessary to fund the $25 billion capital program that the system is supporting. Next, we have fund for capital market activities. This is cash finance, debts, capital programs, as well as defeasance, where, as Olga noted, where we may retire more expensive, older debt with, cheaper bonds at a lower interest rate, which is becoming more of a challenge as interest rates go up.
Joe, let me
I'm sorry, we have.
for one moment. As a reminder, if you've just joined us, please mute your phone. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mikkel.
Thank you, Mikkel.
As I was saying, funds for capital market activities and, cash finance debt service. Last in fiscal year 22, this is expected to be $469 million. That includes both defeasance of debt as well as cash finance capital spending. For fiscal year 23, we are budgeting $263 million, and that is, I believe, almost all exclusively for cash financed, aka PAYGO, debt service. Next, we have the Water Board and the Water Authority's combined expense budget, and that's basically flat at $101 million in the fiscal year 22, $106 million into fiscal year 23. Then there's an accounting credit for prior year DEP budgeted savings, which was $39 million. That was a carryover from fiscal year 21 into 22. And we are not at this time budgeting anything for fiscal year 2023. We'll have to see how that develops during, the end of the fiscal year for 22 and moving into 23. Next, as noted, the rental payment is at zero for both years. We do not expect that there will be a rental payment for this year, nor for next fiscal year. All of these inputs then come to the revenue that's expected to be needed for fiscal year 2022, $3.675 billion, and the budgeted revenue for fiscal year 2023, $3.836 billion. Now, that does not quite come up to the 4.9%. There are other inputs that also modulate or moderate that increase, one being that we continue to see efforts across the city where conservation is being implemented, either through, home improvements, new construction being at a much more efficient level. There are other variables that come in that could be pluses and minuses that, impact that revenue number. But it basically approaches the 4.9% rate increase that we're asking there. Moving to slide 16, DEP's O&M budget invests in core utility activities and customer services while reserving against price inflation. The fiscal year 2023 DEP O&M budget updates include additional funds for inflation and cost contingencies, including $42 million of budgeted funds to protect against higher input costs for energy and chemical purchases, an additional inflation contingency of $49 billion across the main expense categories. This is primarily to cover personnel-related costs, which would account for such things as potential collective bargaining settlement. If there are changes in other, personal services, inputs such as, fringe pension, other, expenses related to employee benefits, as well as to what extent there might be unaccounted for other increases in, other than personal services expenses, such as, parts and equipment, supply chain disruption, things along that line. I will note that these do the two combined come to about $91 million, which I misspoke last night. I said it was 5.8% compared to the base budget. It really is 5.25% when you do it on the base of the O&M. And we feel that is an adequate reserve in terms of what the inflation risk may be out there for the system at this time. Next, the other inputs that increased the overall budget for the O&M was climate resiliency programs, including green infrastructure, was $20 million. Equipment upgrades, replacement and maintenance, $17 million. Funds for additional regulatory and compliance initiatives. This included filtration compliance costs pursuant to federal agreements, $9 million. Design build programs and regulatory compliance work, including environmental health and safety initiative, $8 million. And compliance initiatives under revised water quality standards. That's lead and copper rule, $7 million. The balance that would get us to the $167 million between what is forecasted for fiscal year 22, the 1.657, and the 1.824 for fiscal year 23 is various pluses and minuses of other new needs, some adjustments, and things along those lines. Moving on, I am going to turn the next slides over to Treasurer Omar Nazem to walk through rate schedule changes.
Good evening, everyone. Just to explain a little bit of the terminology, when the board implements a rate increase, the way that rate increase is expressed is there's a document called the rate schedule, and the rate schedule is partly a price list. There's a list of numbers, numerical rates you pay for each 100 cubic feet of water consumed, or each apartment unit in a building if it's on an affordability rate. And each number, each dollar amount in the rate schedule gets increased by the percentage increase the board adopts as its rate increase for the year. That booklet, the rate schedule, also has a second section, which is, it functions as a rule book and procedure guide for how to deal with billing situations that are unusual or irregular. So if an account goes past due, there's a section that deals with the provision of that. If there's a meter that's unable to transmit a reading for a period of time, there's a section that deals with how you estimate the reads to get back into the sections where a meter read was not available. There's a section that deals with properties that are not, you cannot meter because of the physical configuration of the property and so forth. So on slide 17, we're talking about amendments and revisions to that second component, the rule book component, which we do at this time of year. At the same time, we do the rate increase, we consider the rate increase. So there are three rule book revisions we want to draw your attention to this evening. The first is we have a billing policy called the cap on meter charges, which is available to residential properties that are billed on a meter basis, and that are accounts in good standing that you have a history of promptly paying their bills and that are engaging in that are metered and in compliance with the board's programs and billing terms in general. What the cap on meter charges does is excessive consumption on the property, and the property owner is doing the right thing. They're enrolled in leak detection. They're getting email alerts. They're logging into the MyDEP account each day or monthly just to check what the water consumption is. If they notice high usage on the account and they draw the agency's attention to it and they get an authorized inspection by a DEP inspector, then they're eligible for what is essentially a billing insurance protection that caps their charges on that metered basis when they get that authorized DEP inspection. The clarification to the rule is that the inspection's got to take place in the billing period in question. We've had some instances where customers seek to invoke the meter bill cap a year or two after the usage in question, and the inspection takes place at a time far removed from when the high usage was incurred. the revision simply says that when you get that inspection, it needs to be right in that billing period, right during the ideal circumstance would be you see the high usage because you're getting email alerts, you call in the inspector, they inspect it within days or weeks, at least within the 90-day billing period, and if you do that, you're going to be compliant, you'll get the meter bill cap, the protection will be there, you won't have the excessive charges. So it clarifies just the terms and conditions under which that inspection needs to take place. The second revision is it deals with a billing program we have called the Multiple Family Conservation Program, which is a program which is available for mainly affordable multifamily properties that install water efficiency measures. They install water efficient toilets, they install water efficient shower heads, and they generally upgrade and improve the property to a place where it is a water efficient, kind of conservation oriented property. If you do all those things and you get a meter installed, then we have what is an affordability rate of about $1,100 per apartment unit per year that you can be billed on, even though you've got a meter, so we can see the consumption. That's a very attractive rate for multifamily properties because they have that kind of confidence of what their water bill will be. So they can budget on a property with a rent roll that might have limits or how far the rent can be increased, and they protect themselves against rate shock. They know for sure what the water bill is going to be because they know what the size of the building is each year. We have a group of properties that were automatically enrolled in that program a couple of years ago because they were on older rate plans being phased out, and they were given a grace period to bring the properties into compliance and to get all the water efficiency measures in place. They were told that if you didn't get compliant in time, you were going to face a surcharge on your flat rate charges pending bringing yourself into compliance with the paperwork and the water efficiency measures that were required. We don't want to assess a surcharge right now, just given we still have a lot of customers coming out of the pandemic who experienced income loss and have the myriad hardships that people experienced during the pandemic. So what we are suggesting to do in the rate schedule is defer the surcharge on those multifamily properties for another year through June 30th, 2023, and then a question to be revisited next year: what do we do with them? The last one is really an inside baseball issue that will be of interest to a very small number of people, but it simply amends the rate schedule language to clarify that the frontage billing rates, the unmetered billing rates, are not available to properties that are newly constructed or that undergo a substantial renovation, which is defined in more detail in the rate schedule. So it's just a reminder to people and a language clarification where there is some confusion. You're supposed to get metered. You're supposed to be billed on a metered basis. There are exceptional cases where it's not necessary. But overall, if a property is being newly constructed or being renovated, it really needs to be metered. And the frontage rates are not available to properties meeting those criteria. So I'll jump onto slide 18 now. This is sort of a topic not quite related to rate setting, but adjacent to it. And it deals with the sustainable rate study that DEP is undertaking right now. This has been a topic that has been brought up in the hearings for the board's meetings as well for a number of years, and it kind of deals with the question of, is the overall rate structure the right rate structure? Are there new things being done out there in other cities, municipalities, or have industry best practices we should be looking at? So DEP hired a well-regarded Canadian civil engineering company, Stantec, to do a very broad brushstroke study of other municipalities, of our existing rates, to run a big financial model, to do some benchmarking, and to look at what else is out there and kind of compare what we do now with what others are doing, and then kind of make some recommendations of best practices. So we have an update on that study, which I know is of interest to a number of people on the call today. So the update is the working group has completed a comparative rate structure analysis and held several public stakeholder meetings. The work with the consultant is ongoing to complete the remaining project modules. The remaining modules include the revenue requirements and rate options assessment phases, which are where the financial model kind of morphs into how much money you're going to need to fund DEP's operations and the capital budget over the next 10 to 20 years, and what are all the different ways you can play with that rate structure to raise the revenues the utility is going to need to do all the work it does. Once those tasks are completed, the project team will assess options for implementation and assess the potential customer impacts for any prospective rate changes. The project will conclude, as you would hope it would conclude, with a final report and recommendation in which DEP will present recommendations to the board for consideration and potential inclusion in a future year's rate schedule. The timeline estimate is that the remaining stages will be completed by the end of the first quarter of calendar 23, and the final report and recommendations will be made available to the board and the public by the end of calendar 23. Last slide, slide 19. This is the final hearing for this year's rate setting proposal. The next public event is going to be June 1st, which will be a meeting of the board, not a hearing, where the board and DEP staff and board staff will reconvene, and the board will deliberate and consider what to actually vote on and adopt in terms of rates and a budget for fiscal year 23. That meeting will be Wednesday, June 1st at 1 p.m. The information to join is on the board's website and also in the presentation. That's it. Mikhail?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Can you hear me? It's Carney. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Chair. Now I'm going to begin the public testimony portion of the hearing. I'm going to go through my list of pre-registered speakers, each of whom will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After we've gone through the pre-registered list, I'm going to see if anyone else would like to speak, and I will try to be as fair as I can, mediating between folks who speak up at the same time. So once again, please put your phone on mute until I call your name. First, we have Jim Buckley from the University Neighborhood Housing Services. Jim?
Yes. Hi, good evening.
Jim, it's Al Carney. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for that. I'm a familiar character. I realize that these things, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. And
say what you have to say and say it the way you want to say it. It's fine. You and I,
okay.
We spent time at these hearings together in the past, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight.
All right. Thank you. University Neighborhood Housing is a nonprofit community organization that's been working in the Bronx since 1983. We oversee operation of 26 apartment buildings in the Bronx, maintain a neighborhood resource center, which has assisted approximately 3,000 people on individual issues, including a wide array of individual housing issues. And we've developed a research and advocacy component that's worked on a wide variety of issues related to the creation, preservation, and improvement of affordable housing. In all three parts of our work, we see the impact of water. As a result, we've been participating in meetings like this for 30 years. I'm here tonight to say that we oppose the proposed 4.9% increase. The economic impacts of COVID have worsened the financial situations of many of the people with whom we work, and any increase will worsen already difficult situations for both homeowners, multifamily building operators, and as a result, the tenants in many of the buildings. The Bronx has been especially hard hit over these past 2 years, and we see it in the sample of buildings with which we work and the many nonprofit and for-profit managers with whom we work. Most of the buildings with which we work were built before 1947, and our data confirms the New York City Rent Guidelines Board data that shows that this type of building in the Bronx is paying more than 10% of their operating costs for water. As I know you are aware, water is not the only line item that is increasing. Additionally, similar to the customers that have fallen behind in their water bills, many people in the buildings that we work with are struggling with staying or getting current again with their rent. In our small pool of buildings, many tenants have received assistance through the emergency rental assistance program. And actually, fortunately, we've been able to help many of them to apply for it and get it. Well, it's not included in the proposals tonight. I'm asking the Water Board to increase support for the multifamily water assistance program. The recent increase from $10 to $12 million was easily utilized in affordable housing buildings, and the demand for the program shows that more support is needed and merited. I want to acknowledge the folks at HPD that manage this vital program. I had wanted to check and make sure that our impression of the importance and the demand for this program was accurate, and the data that they provided supports that conclusion. Applications for this program exceed available funds by more than 3 times, and the eligible applications from the Bronx alone exceed the amount of money allocated to the program. And in case anyone wonders how $250 per apartment per year can mean that much, I would welcome the opportunity to introduce you to community leaders and housing managers who have utilized these funds for needed capital improvements in their buildings. Finally, I've been participating in the Sustainable Rate Study Group. I think it's valuable to gather input and to explore ways to look at making the water rates that are set more equitable. I'm interested in exploring how to build stormwater charges into the rate system. While I have the opportunity, I want to emphasize the importance of playing out the impact of the various scenarios on the people who can least afford to pay more. And frankly, people need to be able to acknowledge that in all likelihood, it will be necessary to get more support from other sources, including city capital money. I had hopes that federal infrastructure money might help with some of this. It's not really sounding like it has. Anyway, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight and the work that you as the Water Board and the staff of DEP do to maintain the flow and quality of our water. If anyone wants to follow up on anything I've said tonight, I'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Jim, it's Carney again. Thank you very much for your comments. We hear you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have Sherry Diamond on behalf of the Office of Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Sherry?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Yes, good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to read a statement from Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. As New Yorkers are having to work harder and harder to make ends meet in the worst period of inflation this country has seen in nearly 40 years, we must be focused on easing the financial hardship of so many in our community. I appreciate the opportunity to share why I and so many others strongly oppose this proposed increase to the city's water rates. The proposal could not come at a worse time. New Yorkers are struggling with record high prices at the pump, skyrocketing utility bills, higher priced groceries, and burdensome costs of living. To usher in the largest water rate increase in 8 years amidst the economic turmoil we are currently facing is tone deaf, short-sighted, and wrong. According to the Department of Environmental Protection, customers currently own more than $750 million in unpaid water bills. It is important to note that when New Yorkers are already finding it difficult to pay their water bills, the interest rates on certain properties for late payments under this plan would increase from 5% to 18%. This is nothing more than a plan to prey on New Yorkers who have fallen on rough times, individuals that don't have the extra few dollars in their family budget to pay their current water bills, let alone predatory late fees and charged interest. Given the downward economic trajectory we find ourselves in, New Yorkers are feeling the burden of inflation and will be struggling for sturdy financial footing for the foreseeable future. The proposed 4.9 rate increase would translate to an average $4 more a month for single-family homes and $3 per unit for multifamily homes. That may not seem like much to some of you. However, for senior citizens and families that have a budget to barely cover the rising costs of expenses, I remind you that as of 5/24/22, the cost of milk in New York City is $4.37, up from 2021's $3.53. A loaf of bread is $3.52, up from 2021's $2.50. A carton of eggs is $3.62, up from 2021's $1.79. And we all know what gasoline is doing. Are we really asking for New York City families to pick between their water bill and a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a carton of eggs, a gallon of gas? So many people are already being stretched thin by higher costs across the board. Increasing rates will only make it harder for individuals and families just trying to go about their everyday lives. This proposal is a punch to the gut. Water is a necessity, not a luxury. Like oxygen, it is the most basic element needed for survival. Our city's leadership in good conscience cannot and should not raise the cost of this life necessity. At a time when our mayor and city council are considering record-level spending in a bloated budget of nearly $100 billion, nearly the same as the entire state of Florida, which serves twice as many residents, the federal government recently made the largest investment for water infrastructure in the nation's history. Through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, New York will receive roughly $425 billion in clean water and drinking water state revolving funds. I encourage the city to fully utilize this available funding to modernize and maintain its vast water system rather than continuing to raise rates on residents. I urge my local colleagues to be fiscally conservative, not continue to take from hardworking New Yorkers who have seen the cost of living skyrocket while quality of life plummets. I urge the board to do the same and reconsider this proposal and work to alleviate costs rather than exacerbate them. Thank you, Nicole Malliotakis, Member of Congress.
Ms. Diamond, it's Carney again. Thank you very much for your comments, and many thanks to Congresswoman Malliotakis for having you share your comments with us tonight and hers. Thank you.
Good, and thank you very much for allowing us.
Thank you. Up next, we have Joanna Clutter, Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Homes New York, Archdiocese of New York. Joanna?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Thank you for those serving on the water board. Thanks for your attention tonight and the time for me to speak. I pulled out my last year's testimony. I've testified many, many years, and I hate sounding like a broken record, but I may read my testimony so I don't forget to mention anything. So here goes. I'm Johanna Clutter, CEO for Catholic Homes New York, an affordable housing provider under the Archdiocese of New York. Our portfolio consists of 45 buildings and 2,800 units of affordable, low-income, family, supportive, and senior housing located throughout New York City. These are unusual times, we all know, especially for affordable housing, and the residents we serve. This pandemic and rising inflation has disproportionately affected renters, deepening their rent, and in turn have restricted our income collections. We depend on rent collections to keep providing services and meet financial obligations. Our projects have suffered for 2 years with extraordinary economic hardship, and as our projects continue to struggle to pay basic utility, insurance, and debt service bills, I do oppose the 4.9% water and sewer rate increase. And for the past 15 years, followed the DEP rate proposal increases, have witnessed the rate charge for water and sewer service triple in cost. Each year, we rework our buildings budgets and we apply for every incentive program offered to try to absorb the water rate increases. We've spent the additional money to submeter our retail spaces. We've installed low flow fixtures. We fill out all the applications every year to get our buildings into the affordable water rate program. And every year I read the Blue Book. This year, I was happy to read there was a proposed $10 million increase to the affordability program, but I'm sad to hear yet another year extension on the multifamily conservation compliance requirement. This program has never been fully complied with since the discontinuation of frontage billing. As said within the presentation, a lot of the frontage buildings were parked into the MCP program without being vetted and without full inspection of compliance measures. We jumped through hoops to get into that program and spent hours and tons of money to get into the program. It's not right to extend this program to benefit buildings that are not meeting efficiency standards of other MCP compliant buildings, and we need to change that. So I ask again this year that DEP start checking the compliance and issue penalties, or just convert those non-compliant MCP accounts into metered billing. Speaking of change, I would like to see the New York City rental payment eliminated from the DEP budget permanently, freeing up money in the budget for other items. Knowing the importance of ongoing upkeep of aging facilities, we understand and support the capital investment plan. I see it is omitted next year, but it is still stated as an omission. So I'd like to keep it permanently outside of the budget. With 20 years experience working in affordable housing, I have firsthand knowledge of how the increase of water disproportionately affects affordable housing, and I've seen the MCP fixed rate go from program inception in 2014 at $424 per unit and rise now 268% to the proposed $1,134 per unit per year rate. But we have to absorb these water rate increases, and I've watched our building budgets get tighter while not having a very clear breakdown of how collections are actually being spent at DEP. So I challenge DEP to hire a consultant to analyze internal operational costs and cut expenses to work on a tighter budget, as we do. In summary, I ask that DEP continue to expand the multifamily water assistance program as you did this year, and I'll echo Jim Buckley's comments that there are more units that need to get into that program. It's not enough to cover all the affordable units that deserve to be in the home water assistance program. I ask that DEP require MCP compliance and issue penalties or convert those non-compliant MCP accounts to metered billing immediately. I ask that you permanently eliminate the rental payment from the DEP budget. I also ask that DEP please consider having this public hearing on a virtual video platform. It was really hard to follow tonight. And in closing, I ask the Water Board to vote for no increase on the water rate for the next fiscal year. Or, I do understand, knowing how high inflation is, to please consider a lower percentage increase. And thank you for your time and serious consideration for affordable housing providers that are out here just trying to make our budgets work. So thank you for your time.
Ms. Clutter, it's Carney. Would you help me understand why the virtual format was hard to follow tonight?
The slides and having, it would be easier if we were up, and then I could know who all the board members that are present. I didn't catch some of the names.
All right. Would you like to know who's here? Would that help you? Would you feel better about knowing what's happening here if you know the members of the board who are here?
I think I caught 5 of them, or 4 maybe, but yes, I guess it would be helpful.
We can tell you. Mikkel, would you tell Ms. Clutter the board members who are present?
Surely. We have Chairman Alfonso Carney, Adam Freed, John Golden, and Dan Zerli.
So there are 4 of us, Ms. Clutter, and
Okay.
all 4.
I
of
thought
us
I thought Joe Miuran was also on the board. Sorry, he's.
Joe Miuran is the Chief Financial Officer.
He's
Oh,
also
I thought
the
they referred to him as
executive
executive
director.
Right.
He is the executive director of the of the water board, and everybody, all the members, Ms. Clutter would love to see. Just for the avoidance of doubt, we'd love to see the rental payment eliminated permanently. We've got our fingers crossed.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mikkel. Who's next?
Next, we have Nydia Bonfont.
I'm sorry?
Nydia
The name
Bonfont.
again? Okay.
Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Nydia.
Can I start?
Yes, you
Please,
can. Your 5
please
minutes
do.
starts now.
May I know your name, sir?
I'm Alfonso Carney, Carney.
Yes. My name is Nydia Bonifant, and I'm a homeowner, small homeowner. I have a 2-family home on East New York in Brooklyn. I don't represent nobody. I represent myself. And I guess the small homeowners. And I do believe on innovations and better system for New York because everything, when it runs efficient, everything runs better. But they're big corporations that have their financial offices and management. They're managed by companies that their purpose is to decrease their expenses and increase their earnings, and they know about all these programs that were presented today. I've been naive to most of these items. I'm learning as a small homeowner. I believe that we should be educated and the employees to be educated as well. Because I called last week asking for the meeting. They didn't know anything. They didn't know what I was talking about. They couldn't answer anything. They didn't even transfer me to the board. So I request if they could be educated as well. And I know the tools and resources and programs to lower the cost of water. I'm sorry, I'm just reading little notes that I have. And I'm starting to learn more. I was reading about the meeting, even though I cannot look at your faces. I was looking on my other phone, the proposal where you have everything there. I guess he was reading, the other gentleman. And let me see.
Well, I think our pictures are all on the website, and you can go there and take a look, so you will know who we are.
I was following.
And let me apologize for your difficulty in knowing how to connect with this meeting. The board members are not aware of those kinds of issues. But we certainly don't want for that to be the case. We would like very
Oh,
much.
no, I don't know if you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that it was difficult to connect. I found information through the Senator Prasad that she posted. So that's how I find out about the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, as a small homeowner, one or two family home, we have less opportunities, I feel, because then we depend on programs versus the big companies and big buildings that they have all kind of services. They're different people for different things. I'm only one. I'm trying to educate and do things the right way, but it's kind of difficult, but I'm trying.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, the liquid, when the forgiveness program does not work at all, sir, because I have my 2 water boilers, they damaged. I applied, and my bill was high. They didn't even bother with it. They said that I didn't qualify. So they should review those forgiveness programs because I'm a small homeowner. And I didn't even know about this other program that they have, the home water assistance program. They should look into it and educate, because I didn't even get a credit last year and I don't know anything about it. I just find out today about it as well. I know I should educate myself. I'm trying to educate myself today more, and I'm trying my best, but it's not the same for small homeowners. And we just came out of the pandemic. It's very difficult for a small homeowner to cope with all the increases, the water, the gas, the electricity, when we have tenants that are not working, they're not paying, and I'm trying to keep my place, and we can't even get them out of the property. So I will urge the board to take in consideration, and if they can postpone for another year the increase, or they could change and increase other facilities and decrease the small homeowners, because we're trying to survive as well. And another issue that I see here, I was reading, the UMass Microsoft system conversion was the largest financial software upgrade. They put that here at my home, and my bill went up $200 for 4 people. I asked last week about having a review, and they told me I have to pay for somebody to come and check what is happening. I cannot afford it. But the way it was represented on the meeting is saying that anybody can request somebody to do an inspection, but I was told that I have to pay $150 for that inspection. I don't have that money at the moment, but I would like to know how can I do it to be more efficient. And last of all, I was reading that there's a program already on Long Island for catching improvement, drainage upgrade, storm sewers, and infrastructure. I cannot pronounce the word. Infrastructure. Can you help me, please?
Infrastructure.
Yes. For water and mainline hydrant upgrades, I'm in favor because I live on a corner. I've been living here since 2004. East New York is being growing up, many buildings, but I don't know if anybody's doing a study and reviewing everything that hasn't been taken care in years. I saw that they came last year, and this year they were fixing the sewer, but on my corner, when it rained during the storm, the water came all the way to my inside, my driveway. So my corner that area needs to be fixed. So if they could have more proper balance and have consideration for East New York, and because it's being done on Long Island, why didn't they start it on East New York? One of the oldest areas where we haven't have any upgrades. And that's my presentation, sir. If you have any questions, because I see so many different things.
You're very kind. And it's important that you express your views. We are very pleased to receive them. There are people on this call who will address some of the problems that you have enunciated, that you have actually brought to our attention. I don't know that we can solve them all, and I cannot promise
I know that.
will happen.
I know that, sir.
But there are people, we have your name, we know how to reach you. What we will do is to make sure that we can do what's possible to address the issues that you've just raised. And we apologize for the difficulties that you have had in contacting the water board, the people, DEP, the people who will now respond to your issues. Thank you very much for raising them.
But my question is, do I pay to have an inspection? Because I really would like to learn and make everything better. I mean, work with it.
I hear you. I hear you. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, sir.
But someone on this call will be in touch with you to explain what the circumstances are and to help you understand what you have to do and what you may not have to do.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is Al. This is Deputy Commissioner Jeff Lynch. I just want to make sure that we got her contact information here, and I do see your phone number here. But Mikhail, I don't know if you were able to get her contact information during the call, but if not, you're welcome.
I'm sorry. I had a different phone number. I left a different phone number when I called. That's the number that they contact me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Then we'll
welcome,
follow up with you tomorrow morning.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Mikhail?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jeff. So that concludes our list of pre-registered speakers. Is there anyone else on the call that would like to speak this evening? I'm going to ask that you say your name, and then I will call on folks in the order that they spoke up.
We encourage people who are listening and who are able to speak up to speak up. This board needs to hear public comment with regard to this proposal. And we hear you. We want to hear you. Please let us know what you're thinking. Well, sounds like somebody's got a lot of tissue paper they want to boil. But I don't know what the story is there, but are there people who would like to comment? We encourage you to do that. Mikhail, I think not. I think we have come to the conclusion of the meeting. Please.
Mr. Chair, this is Member Freed.
Sir.
Yeah. I just wanted to add my thanks to those who came up to testify tonight. I always appreciate, as you said, the feedback and the information we get and perspectives from members of the public who come to testify, and really, in particular, always appreciate hearing from you, and the data-driven response they take to the complicated issues. So just wanted to add my thanks and appreciation. I look forward to reviewing all of the written testimony that was presented tonight.
Absolutely, Adam. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there other members who want to comment on what we've heard tonight? Hearing no other comments, Mikhail, as they say, it's time to adjourn. You're the person who has that responsibility. Please do it for us.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again to all of our speakers. This concludes today's hearing, and the board will reconvene on Wednesday, June 1st at 1 p.m. to consider and vote on proposed rates and the budget for next year. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.